This week on Business Mike, the business of comics. My guest today is Jide Martins. He's the founder of the Comic Republic, a comic book startup based in Lagos, Nigeria. In today's show, Jide explains the process of creating a comic book from start to finish, as well as some of the ways in which the Comic Republic generates revenue despite distributing its comics for free. We also discuss his favorite superheroes growing up, as well as the comic book movies that have excited him the most over the years. All this and more next on Business Mike.
You're listening to the Business Mike podcast. Amazing interviews with inspiring entrepreneurs. Subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher Radio for a brand new episode every Monday.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Business Mike. My name is Daudi and today I'm joined by Jide. Jide, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mike. How are you? I'm glad to be here.
Right. Jide, could you just tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
Okay, my name is Jide Martins. I'm the CEO of Comic Republic. At Comic Republic, we tell interesting stories via fictional characters. We try to bring Africa's best foot forward. We believe that it's possible for Africans to do good, save the world. So we come up with the concept of why not make superheroes out of African characters? You know, a full cast of people who actually go out and sacrifice themselves every day, and they're all born and bred in Africa.
Right. Now, I'm sure just like myself, you grew up reading some of these comic books, things like Spider-Man, Superman, and so on. But for you, what made you go out to create a comic book company on a large scale where you really did it professionally and dived head and shoulders into the project?
First thing I tell everybody when they meet me is, look, I have a confession. I'm a geek. As in, I've always loved everything geeky. I've always loved everything that has to do with comics from the time I was a child. I found the world fascinating. You know, I remember when I was a lot younger, my mom didn't really want us to go out much, so she was always getting us a lot of stuff to entertain us and keep us in. And one of the things she used to buy then was comics. And I used to trace every single comic book she bought. And she'd be so upset because she spent so much money, buying those comics. But, from there, I started loving the art of drawing comics itself. And, I started reading, of course, Superman. I was a big fan of Superman because he just always wanted to do the right thing, no matter what it was. That's the Superman I grew up with, at least. And, it inspired me to always want to behave myself and want to, always strive for what is good. And I grew up with that mentality. And usually whenever I had a hard decision to make, whenever I needed to do something that most people wouldn't do, because I would ask myself, what would Superman do? And what would Batman do? And that usually used to help me make the right decision. So in that vein, looking at things the way the world is right now, people are not really that big on religion anymore. People don't really listen to their parents anymore. I came to the conclusion that it was time for me to take some of the things that I've learned and give it to this generation, this generation and generation coming. And then I decided to go into comics, and that's how I got into comics.
What made you feel that a comic book business is something that would actually work out?
Okay. First things first, it was a thing of the passion. I wasn't satisfied doing anything else. I would try to do something else, and I would find that I would come back and open my comic books. Or anytime I saw anything that had to do with a comic book, my heart would just go into, why am I not doing this? And I just had this feeling that I could do this. And for me, so it was more of passion. But, on the business side of things, it started becoming apparent to me for the past 2 to 3 years that the whole world has gone superhero crazy. We're in superhero season. Most of the series that people really enjoy watching are superhero series. Most of the movies that are cleaning out the box office are superhero comics about superheroes, And I thought the world has come to a point right now, at least, where we're all crazy about superheroes. We've accepted the genre and we're comfortable with it. There is no better time to go into this business. And if you look at, what comics are making in countries like the US and the UK, and both movies based on comic characters, they're making millions of dollars out of this franchise. So I thought, why not? Why not start now? Why not build something that's its home base?
Right, and depending on how you depict a character in your comic book, that might determine your sales. Because if I use an example of Batman, Batman is a very iconic superhero. However, when they did the movie Batman and Robin, because of the way they portrayed him, that movie didn't do very well because of how light it was. The true fans were not very happy with it. However, with the same character done by Christopher Nolan with The Dark Knight, Batman Begins, and then The Dark Knight Rises, it was a success, and they carried that on into the new movie, Batman vs. Superman. So with your characters, how, first of all, do you come up with a new character? Is this based on real people? Is it based on existing superheroes but with an African twist? How do you come up with your characters, and then how do you try and tell their stories in a way that's engaging to the audience?
Okay, so at Comic Republic, when we're coming up with the character base, one of the first things that we use in deciding what our character is going to be like is, people say African superheroes, but we say, why don't we create superheroes that happen to be African? So we're not really focused on, the superhero being African, but Africans being superheroes. Meaning we say, okay, let's create a character that can stand beside any character anywhere in the world, no matter what your preference is, be it black or white. If you look at this character, you fall in love with them. So we follow universal themes mostly. We're like, okay, you know what? If you were Asian, if you were black, if you were white, would you like this type of character? That's our first guideline. And then we now say, okay, you know what? When we now come to the characterization itself, so what we've done is we try to make our design more universally acceptable, something that anybody anywhere in the world will look at and be impressed with. Then when it now comes to characterizations, how does the character behave? How does it think? How does it act? We now come to personalities of people who are, for example, in Nigeria. If our character is a Nigerian, or if it's from Zimbabwe, or it's from Ghana, or if it's from South Africa, then we start to look at, okay, what are the common traits of people from these areas? How do they act? What social factors are surrounding them? What are the things that make them tick? What are the problems that they're having in the environment? Because we believe that people, the character has to work from an environment. So that helps us determine, the character behavior, environment, and things like that. And, we go on to other, I don't want to bore you with the details when it comes to, the art, the colors, the lettering.
That was my next question. I was going to ask how many artists you have, and then how do you maintain the look of a character? Because, artists draw differently. They have different styles. So how do you keep a consistent look for a character? Okay,
yeah. Altogether, I think we have close to 8 artists. We have a 15-man team. We have people who do lettering, we have people who do coloring, and we have like an admin team also. We have people who do marketing and things like that. But yes, altogether, I think about 6 artists off the top of my head, 6 to 8 artists. So how do we maintain the look of the character? Characters have particular traits. For example, like this character is 6 feet tall, so you always have to draw him tall. This character has a wide jaw. This character has a flat nose or a big nose or a pointed nose or a small nose. This character is always in mood. So you're usually, for example, in the case of Guardian Prime, for example, which is one of our characters, Guardian Prime is always serious. So you usually draw him with a kind of a little frown because he's always focused. He's a serious-minded type of character. On the other hand, if we're drawing a character like a Power Boy, for example, or New Tech, those guys are a bit more light themed. They follow social media trends and things like that. So we're usually drawing them shiny. And you look at things like age. This character is in his 20s, so you ensure that you draw a character that looks like he's in his 20s. And if the character is in teens, you make sure you draw a character in teens. So what we do is we determine certain benchmarks that say, okay, these are the specific characters, because we do understand that no 2 artists draw the same. They draw alike, but they don't draw the same. So if we can measure things like he must always have a wide jaw, then people start to notice the similar traits and the characters look alike all the time.
Right. And basically, for some of us who don't know what it takes to have a comic book out there, you before we started this interview, actually, you told me there's a comic book you've just finished. What's the process in creating a comic book from start to finish in terms of coming up with a story all the way to publishing it?
Wow, that's a very interesting story. The process we use in, creating our comic books, for us, it's particularly interesting. First thing, okay, like you said, we just came up with Ajay, so let me use Ajay as our point of base. So the first thing we do is we ask the scriptwriter to send in the script. We have a general discussion about what the comic book should look like, should feel like, the direction it's heading. So we always do teamwork, which is one of the strongest um, traits of Comic Republic. We sit down and we talk together about every issue that's about to come out, and we plan everything. So we sit down and like, okay, this is what we want. So the script writers now take the information we've gathered and they now, work on it. They make it better. They expand, shake the plot, if I may call it that, and they send us a script that has, describing this panel should look like this panel should look like that, and it's passed to the illustrators. The illustrators now start to do their research because one of the things to make a comic interesting is if it can somehow be tied to what people are used to and what people understand. And, we focus on things like making sure that our timelines are correct. What kind of cars are they using in this period? What kind of building were you using in the period in which the story is written? So we do our research, and when we're done with the research, we have things like references for environment and things like that. We dive into the comic, and from time to time, we consult the scriptwriter. We send in the pages as they're being drawn to say, okay, is this what you had in mind? We go back and forth. Sometimes the artist can adjust the script saying this doesn't work visually. So the writer has to rewrite it in a way that will make it appealing visually. And once we're done with the penciling, then it is inked. And there are two types of drawing. The people who draw organically, who draw on paper using a drawing board, and the people who draw on the tabs. So we have those two types of artists in Comic Republic. I think about a good 80% of our artists use graphic tabs, and we have another 20% who still draw the traditional way. So if you're drawing on paper, once you're done with the pencils, then it's sent for inking. Once that is inked, it is scanned and it is sent to the color artist. If you're drawing on the graphic tab, it's basically already inked because you can draw already in the dark ink, then you send it for coloring. The guys doing the coloring, confirm from the artist what they had in mind, and also from the writer. So we give them basically, okay, this is supposed to be red, this is supposed to be blue, this is the mood here, and they translate it. Once the coloring is done, it's sent back to the guys in editing so that they can do the lettering. So they letter the comic and they go through it. Three different people. We have the creative director go straight to make sure that everything goes with the story. Then it's sent to the copy editor who makes sure that there's nothing wrong with spellings, editing, and things like that before it's finally sent to our marketing manager, who she makes sure that, okay, the comic itself follows all standards. There's nothing that breaches any codes in for that particular type of comic. And then we publish it.
Wow, that's quite a process. I'm sure there's some people who thought you just open Microsoft Paint and then a few hours later out comes the comic.
No, that's not a professional way to do it.
Right. Now, when it comes to telling the stories of these characters, you've already explained to us that some of them have characteristics based on some of the nationalities that they hail from. So first of all, who is your target audience with these comic books? Is it adults? Is it children of a certain age, or does it cut across?
Okay, we try to say it cuts across, but we find out slowly that our stories are tending more to teenagers stroke adults. We're presently working on a title that's specifically for kids. The age where people say comics are for kids have passed. If people want to be realistic, it's mostly the teenagers and the adults. So we have more adults reading comics nowadays than teenagers. But we still try to make sure that all our comics are children friendly. We have one or two titles that we say is only for the teenagers, so we put a teen mark on it. Teenagers, we're looking at people from the age 16 to 35. Those are mostly our target audience.
Right. And the reason why I asked that question is because depending on your target audience, some of the material you can put in the comic book can maybe help them connect to the real world in a certain way? Because an example is Captain America. In the earlier issues of Captain America, they were going through the World War, so they would hint at some of the things that were happening between the US and Hitler. So through comics, even if you weren't watching the news or anything, at least you'd get an idea that, your country is at war with Germany through the comic, and maybe try and educate you on how it is you can be a proper individual in society and not end up getting those evil traits of the Nazis. So through your comics, do you sometimes educate and maybe touch on themes that are happening in real life, or is this a world that is completely different from ours entirely?
Oh, it's a little bit of both. We're trying to make sure, one thing about comics is supposed to be an escape, at least what we feel at the Republic. And so we try to make sure we don't hint too much on the real bitter issues of the world. We believe in positivity, and we try to create an environment where you can dive into, and at the end you leave it positive. So we try not to, emphasize on so many dark and sad things that are happening in the world today. So for us, it's like this is a safe place you can go to at this particular point in time. But that being said, we touch on real issues in the sense of we understand that, things don't just happen from nowhere. Things are cultivated from a mind that has imbibed certain things over a period of time. So we try to, put in issues like, it's okay to fight for what you believe in. It's the moral thing to do is to stand up for other people. We touch on issues of diversity because, for example, we have a good about 50% of our heroes are female, and we say, look, women also can stand up and protect our society the same way men can. Women also have the same opportunities if they are empowered. So we touch on moral issues, but we honestly try to stay away from the dark issues. Yes, our heroes go out and face bad guys, but we, for example, we'll tell you there's terrorism in the world, but we would not specifically target a particular terrorist group. We'll tell you our heroes have gone to stop terrorism, and that it is right to stop terrorism. It's wrong to kill other people. We give a more moral, holistic view on the issues we touch on.
What are some of the revenue sources for your business? Because when I look at the other successful comic book franchises, the likes of the DC and Marvel, they make money from things like T-shirts, toys, movies. They sometimes have Comic-Cons where comic book fans meet. What are some of the ways in which Comic Republic is making money?
Okay, so fortunately, Comic Republic has a very unique and weird model. We give out our comics free. Every time we release a comic, you go to our site, you can download it or read it free. Now, the reason why we're doing that is because, first things first, you have to have an audience to sell something to. People don't just buy things they don't know or they don't understand or they don't like. So what we're trying to do, and we've been doing that for the past 3 years, is we're trying to build a followership. We understand this is the same model that was used for things like Facebook and YouTube, and we understand the importance of actually getting a followership first. So the first thing we give out our comics free. But fortunately from that, what has been happening is we have different companies who want representation via comic book medium. And that's because of our method of giving it out free. More and more people are now interested in comic book medium. So we have people who actually want to see illustrations instead of real life people, or we have companies who now see the power of illustration because our fans are reacting and, appreciating our works more and more. So we get a lot of endorsement jobs. We get a lot of, for example, we just recently finished a comic on malaria. We've also finished another one based on an internet trading platform. We're about to do another one that has to do with teaching this particular university trying to get us to use our comics to teach how to use math and calculations to solve problems in the world. And we're getting paid for all of this. The Future Awards, which held a few months ago, we made all the nominees into superheroes and we were paid for that. So we've been getting a lot of endorsements and branding jobs using superheroes, and fortunately we're making money from that. Sooner or later, when we're certain that we do have a fan base, we have loyal fans, we might start to put a token on top of the comics. But right now, most of our revenue comes from first branding and advertising in the comics themselves, because we do have people who are advertising in the comics themselves, and from other endorsement related jobs.
No, that's actually a very solid business model, because you want to get your name out there initially. And from what you've just described, it seems as though these are the comics you're creating for these people you've mentioned, and not necessarily involving your superheroes. They could be unique and specific for that purpose.
They're mostly unique and specific for those companies and those purposes, yes.
No, makes a lot of sense. What lessons have you learned from the big boys, the likes of DC and Marvel? When you look at the way they're doing their thing, what things have you learned from them so far that maybe you can apply to Comic Republic? And do you see yourself one day making superhero movies just like they are?
Oh, yes. First thing is persistent and consistency. You need to be persistent. You need to constantly do what it is that you're doing. You see, we look at DC and Marvel today, and, they seem to be making a lot of money, but there was an era where comic books were about to go extinct because the guys who were making the comics were not making money at all. We have people like Marvel who practically lost their place of business because they couldn't pay their rent. Marvel at the point in time had to start selling their characters to companies like Fox and Sony because they couldn't make it. But today, Marvel Studios is earning millions of dollars. Same thing too with DC. So the first thing I learned from the big twos is, Rome was not built in a day. You need to be consistent. And the truth is, what we're doing is we're telling stories to people. You need to get more people interested. So you need to constantly come out with stories that people are interested in. Artists in general, creatives, tend to want to do the things that they believe is right. A creative person is usually strongly opinionated. We come up with our own concepts. But what I've learned from DC and Marvel is you need to listen to the fans. You need to find out what it is that the fans would like to see, and you need to give them exactly that. And, a lot of the time it means, you need to be decent in your storytelling. You need to, try and, cut across different sorts of people. And you need to be professional, which is the final thing. You need to actually put effort into the business of comic making and not, like you said, just open Photoshop paint and just do something and send it out there. No, you need to treat it like a business. You need to have a plan. You need to have a strategy. You need to have a marketing team. You need to go through the process to make sure that it's top notch. And, those two companies, I believe that's why they're up there. What they turn out 90% of the time is really stuff that it's, amazing. And that's where we're going to with Comic Republic.
Right. So we've talked about DC and Marvel, and both of them are churning out incredible movies this year. Is there any particular movie that you're excited about this year? And what is that movie? And then the second question is, what's your favorite comic book movie of all time?
To be honest with you right now, I'm loving Captain America and the Avengers. And I have to mention both because if you look at it, really, they're both just the same thing. Anytime you see a Captain America movie, it involves the Avengers in one way or the other. And of course, you can't have an Avengers movie without Captain America. So to me, they're both the same thing. So in that vein, my most favorite movie so far, superhero movie so far, would be Captain America Winter Soldier. And my next movie, the one I'm excited about, is coming up in about a week. I think it's actually a few days from today that we're holding the interview, is Captain America Civil War. The reviews have been amazing. The previews have been awesome. And if Marvel is anything to go by, I know the movie will be great.
Right. What were your thoughts on Batman versus Superman? That's a movie that really divided both the fans and the neutrals. Where do you stand on that particular movie?
I don't like talking about the movie because I wasn't happy with it. And, I'm a DC fan. I love Superman. But let me put it this way. I don't think Snyder did a good job. I think so many things could have been done differently. Snyder seems to be more on the dark side of things. If you look at the kind of comics or movies he's been making, he's a bit more, how will I put it? Superheroes are about being optimistic, about being bright, and but Snyder does movies that deal with the dark, more on the mysterious evil side than the bright side. So I don't think it was a good choice to do Superman or Batman. He pulled off Superman. Luckily, there were issues with that, but he completely went overboard with Batman versus Superman, and in turn, it didn't come out to be a good movie. But that being said, the movie did have some good sides to it. I mean, every scene that had to do with Batman, and Batman is generally a dark kind of character, was awesome. Ben Affleck as Batman was the best Batman I had ever seen. So I think Ben Affleck did an awesome job. The movie portraying Batman was awesome. Wonder Woman, I was one of those people that didn't think Gallup would pull it off, but at the end of the day, she did an amazing job. I completely loved Wonder Woman. That being said, overall, I wasn't too happy with the movie. I'm hoping that DC gets their act together in future.
Yeah, because if there's one thing we can learn from Marvel Studios, and not just in terms of making movies, but generally in terms of strategy, it seems right from Iron Man in 2008, these guys knew how many movies they were going to make, maybe 10 in advance. And so when they were writing the stories, they made sure that they linked in perfectly well. And so when you watch a movie, you don't feel like this movie has too much in it, or I'm confused, or this and that. Whereas with Batman versus Superman, I felt like they probably had 3 or 4 movies within one that they tried to squeeze in together just so they can set up the Justice League.
Yeah. That being said, also, what I think Marvel did was what I was saying earlier. I think what Marvel did was they were making a movie for the fans. They were making a movie based on what they know the fans like, love, and, I've always known. And even if they were making 1 or 2 adjustments, the adjustments were also tilted towards the fans. But unlike the difference with that and Batman versus Superman was Snyder was trying to bring his own take on these things. And of course, yes, it was too much in one movie. We had a movie that was talking about Batman versus fighting Superman. In the same movie, they were trying to introduce the Justice League. In the same movie, they brought in Doomsday. In the same movie was Death of Superman. It was too much.
That's the end of part 1. We're going to take a very quick break, and we'll be back with the Trivia Lounge, which is a segment of the show whereby I just ask you a few questions that are basically related to your industry, in which case this will be comic books. So we'll be back after this quick break.
To turn an idea into a business takes a lot of hard work. There is no magic formula, and it does not happen overnight. And people can go on my website, they can meet me, they will hear me public speak around the world, and they'll think, wow, what an amazing business. And it is an amazing business, but there are challenges every single day. And I still tear my hair out every day. So I think it really is about finding people to support you, asking for help, and not being afraid to admit when you can't do something.
For more amazing interviews, go to www.businessmike.com or sign up for our weekly newsletter by simply sending an email to subscribe@businessmike.com.
Welcome to the Trivia Lounge. This is the very first question, 1 of 5. Which celebrity wanted to play Spider-Man so desperately that he attempted to buy Marvel Comics? Was it John Travolta, Michael Jackson, or Prince?
I think the only person that could attempt to buy Marvel Comics would be Michael Jackson.
Yes, that is correct. Michael Jackson loved Spider-Man so much. He wanted to play him, and he wanted to play Professor Xavier as well. So he decided, because they didn't want him to do that, he thought he would just buy the studio and do it anyway. Right, this is the second question. Before he was green, what was the original color chosen by Marvel Comics for the Incredible Hulk? Was it blue, gray, or purple?
If my memory serves me correct, it was gray.
Yes, that is correct. It was gray, and what happened was, as they were printing some of the issues for the Incredible Hulk, they ran out of ink. And so they decided, let's just make him green. And that is how we have a green Hulk today. What's the most expensive superhero movie ever made? Was it Man of Steel, The Avengers, or Spider-Man 3?
I would say Man of Steel. I hope I'm not wrong.
Unfortunately, you're wrong. The correct answer is Spider-Man 3. I don't have the exact figures, but the budget they actually had for Spider-Man 3 was ridiculous. And for them to have made a profit, that made it a very, very successful movie. I can't remember exactly what the figure was, but it was a very, very high amount of money. And none of the movies that we're watching today come close to what they spent on Spider-Man 3. Right, so here's question number 4. The Harvard psychologist William Moulton Matson is the inventor of the very first lie detector. But he is also responsible for creating a very iconic superhero. Which one of the following is that superhero? Is it The Flash, Wonder Woman, or Aquaman?
I will go with Aquaman.
The correct answer is actually Wonder Woman.
Are
So,
you serious?
yes. This gentleman who invented the lie detector as we know it also created Wonder Woman, and it's no
yes,
surprise.
how can I forget? That you has lasso that makes you tell the truth. Oh, how could I
That's
miss
right.
that question? Oh, I'm sorry, my fans out there.
That's right. That was the obvious hint there that there was a connection between the two. Right. Now, this is the final question, which I'm sure you'll get. Which one of these is the highest selling comic book series of all time? Is it Batman, Spider-Man, or Superman?
Batman.
These statistics were as of 2013, and Superman had 600 million, Batman with 460. I don't know why, but I tend to believe because Superman started selling way before Batman, probably that's how we got a lead on it, and because it's one of the oldest superheroes by default.
As at last year, Batman had surpassed Superman in sales.
Wow, that's incredible. Actually, Spider-Man I thought would be right up there as well, but that's incredible for Batman to, someone who was inspired by Superman to now be doing much better, both in terms of the books and the movies as well.
Yes, I think, the world came to a place where Superman was too powerful and too out of reach for people to just, identify with at that point in time. And so they started turning towards Batman. But I just think it was DC's inability to make the character more dynamic and more interesting.
Right, yeah, something they've struggled with, even with the movies. I can't tell you the last Superman movie I watched that I enjoyed. If I'm not mistaken, it's probably the very first Superman movie. That's my favorite Superman movie.
Same here.
Right, so that's it for the Trivia Lounge. You've done very well. Actually, the very last question, I didn't know the answer. You corrected me on that one, so you clearly know your stuff.
Thank you very much.
Right, and now any advice you'd have for someone out there who's an artist but that wants to pursue this as a career, someone that's into comics just like you are, just like I was when I was younger, but they want to pursue this as a career. From your experience, what sort of encouragement can you give them?
So the first thing first I would say is first you must have talent. You must have a talent in either drawing, writing, or basically just telling stories. Now, talent is just the first step. You can now convert that into skill. Skill is when you work on something constantly and you get better at it. So once you've gotten the skill, the other advice I would give you is to take it professionally. Do all the things you're supposed to do. A lot of creators try to do everything themselves. Don't do that. Get people who are good at the various aspects of, either people who can write, people who can do admin. You need a good marketing person, somebody who's good with social media, somebody who's good with people. You need people who can write good stories. If you're the one writing the stories, you need a very good artist. So take your time, find people who are good at what they do, take the profession seriously, be patient. It pays eventually, and the sky is the limit.
Right, so this is the final question. If you were cast away to a desert island, what book would you take with you? What movie would you take with you? And what song would you take with you?
Okay, book I'll take with me would be Superman Unchained. That's a comic by Snyder, Jim Lee, and Scott Williams. That's Scott Snyder. He wrote the story, Jim Lee did the art, and I think Scott Williams did the inks. I think. Okay, so that's the book I would take. The movie I would take with me would be Captain America: Winter Soldier. I can watch that movie over and over and over again. And the song would be the soundtrack for it's called Now We're Free. It's movie for Gladiator, soundtrack for Gladiator. Yeah.
How can people connect with you on social media or website? How can we learn more about Comic Republic and get in touch?
Like I said earlier, our comics are free, every single one of them. We have 9 characters, and you can go and read the various issues of them free. Please visit www.thecomicrepublic.com. That's thecomicrepublic.com, one word. And Facebook is Comic Republic it's Facebook/Comic Republic. So if you visit any of those 2 pages, you'll be able to connect with all our other social mediums. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube. You'll find them on our site. Once again, it's thecomicrepublic.com.
Thank you so much, Jide, for joining us today on Business Mike. We really appreciate everything you've shared with us, and we wish you the very best with the Comic Republic.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being on board.
Thanks for listening to the Business Mike podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you'd like to listen to more episodes just like this one, simply go to businessmike.com. I would love to hear from you. So if you've got any questions or feedback, you can reach me on Twitter at Daudi Mugabe, on Facebook at Business Mike, or email. That's daudi@businessmike.com. Don't forget, we have a brand new episode every Monday. And until then, take care.